So you're in Iceland, Rachel, is that what you're telling me?
Yes, I'm in Iceland at the moment with 6 T-level students and Kath Norris.
Wow. And go on then. Why?
Well, so I didn't arrange it, Kath arranged it. So they're childcare students. So we've had funding, it was arranged quite a few years ago, and Erasmus funding, I believe.
Right.
Due to COVID, students never came. So
Right.
it appeared again last year, Christmas
Fantastic.
time. And yeah, so we've been really lucky, and we've brought 6 students over, and they're doing work experience in a kindergarten and school.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
really
yeah. So is Kath joining us this morning as well then?
She's just sat next to me, like she's going to listen in.
Okay.
She's going to join tomorrow because Kath supports the childcare rather than the health. So
yeah. Okay, brilliant. So yeah, so for those of you who can hear, I don't know who can quite talk at the moment or who can. Oh, hi Kirsty, nice to see you. Then this is the T-level transition program technical focus group for the health and science route. Those of you who I haven't met before, really lovely to see you all this morning. My name's Sharon Moore. I'm a technical education advisor, both for the Association of Colleges and also for the Department for Education. With me this morning, Lauren's here. Lauren is one of the advisors on the transition and T-level programs at AOC. So Lauren's going to help facilitate the session with me this morning. And our colleague Abby, who's our events executive, she's here to help me with all the technical bits and pieces. Abby will be doing registers. She may well contact you by a message if she's not quite sure if you're on our register or not. So, as I say, really warm welcome. Really nice to see you this morning. This morning's session is really for those of you who do have some experience of the T-level transition program, and in particular the technical component, because it's a real chance for us this morning to look at what you have been doing, what's been going really well, where you might have had some challenges, and what you might be thinking about doing next. So the way we've planned the session for this morning, hopefully you can see the slides, obviously some welcome and introductions. I will just very quickly remind us about the T-level transition program. I know that you will all know that, but I think it will just set in context what we're going to be talking about for this morning. So then we will really focus on your experience of the T-level transition program, and depending on how many people we've got, we'll work out the best way to do that. We might just do it as a round robin, or we might go into breakout rooms depending on how many people we've got. So we'll have a look at what your experiences have been, and in a second breakout, or together, however we decide to do it, we'll focus a little bit more there on the monitoring of student progress on your transition program. Obviously, you can all use the chat. I know you've already done that, and some of you said hi in there, which is great. As I say, we may or may not use breakout rooms. We have obviously got this presentation. There's nothing really much on here that you won't have seen before, but it will be available at the end of the session this morning. I will put it onto Padlet. If you're not familiar with Padlet, I'll just remind you about what that is. If at all possible, you know, more than happy to answer questions as we go along this morning. If by any chance there's questions that don't get answered, we'll go away and find some answers for you. But because we're running a whole series of these across all the different routes, we do always put together a set of frequently asked questions as well. So again, we will make that available to you. Don't worry, Amy. Doesn't matter if you don't currently teach the T levels. We're focusing particularly on transition program this morning rather than T levels. So obviously it's really difficult to not mention T levels when you're talking about a T level transition program. But you know, lots to hear from other people, and everybody's input will be really valuable this morning. So don't worry too much about that. That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Sarah, for adding yours in as well. Yep, that's great that both of you, Sarah and Sarah, are here. But again, that's absolutely fine. Yep, Kirsty, that's fine. Let's all have a talk about who has and who hasn't done what. So yeah, no problem though, Sarah, with your camera. That's brilliant. Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to just note into chat as to who you are and where you're from? That would be absolutely brilliant. Rather than doing a whole whiz round everybody, do just put anything in there. Did you get your mic to work, Julian? After all that little bit, did it work?
I'm all sorted now. I pressed the wrong button.
Oh, well, there you go, Julian. Brilliant. While you're there, Julian, you might as well tell us where you're from.
Yeah, cool. Okay, my name's Julian. I'm work at Alton College in Hampshire. Part of a sort of larger sort of campus group, HSDC. I teach across a range of different courses. So obviously the pre-T level, this being our first year, as well as single A level, and just running out BTEC level 3 courses as well. So a bit of a mash of sort of courses at the moment. And also I also teach on the level 3 T level, supporting the adult nursing team.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, great. And
Like
I could say, you know, it's great because I know there's a lot of you who do teach on both transition and T levels. So it's great that we can talk about both. And obviously today we'll focus on transition, but I know we have to mention the T levels at the same time. So that's brilliant. Thanks very much, Julian. So you work with Ashley and Emily then from HSDC as well, yeah? So those are some of the people. Yeah, brilliant. Hi, Rachel. I'm sure we've met before. Rachel from Manchester, haven't we? So brilliant, yeah.
Oh no, I'm not from Manchester.
No, there's another Rachel.
No,
as well.
morning.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I just quickly do apologise if I don't talk loads. I've got a class at the moment, and my cover is actually off sick. We've got a lot of sickness this week, so I'm multitasking.
That's fine. We have met before, haven't we?
We have,
Rachel?
yes. You came and did the session at the college.
Yeah, I came to Manchester, didn't I? That time, yeah. You just you've got your ward all set up then, hadn't you? So we were having a look at your ward, weren't we?
Yes,
so brilliant.
We've got a midwife delivering the skill sessions.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so that's what we're up to today. My voice is going to go now. So I will just start with this quick little overview bit, and I know for some of you, as I say, this will be really familiar, but again, you know, more than happy for you to post things into the chat as I'm going along, because there'll be lots of bits where you will know things that will be really valuable to others. So please don't think you just have to put questions in there. Please add to what I'm saying as well. We've covered this really, but it is this opportunity for you today, this morning, to share your experiences of delivering the TLTP, those who have, and also those of you who are planning, what you're thinking about doing, etc. That would be really great to hear as well. It is that opportunity to really now focus on how you have or how you're going to monitor student progress. Because I think this is one of the things that some people have said to us in terms of the T-level transition program, where they feel that they really need to do a little bit more work to make sure that the transition program is doing what it's supposed to do. And obviously this morning is that opportunity to network and collaborate as well. So we start with this one, which for many of you will be ingrained, but I think it is always worth a check back on this, this slide is literally lifted from the Framework for Delivery document. So many of you will be familiar with that Framework for Delivery document. It is effectively the instruction manual for the T-level transition programme. And the reason that we pick this bit out is because it's just that, yeah, Sarah, I'll explain where the slides will be for you at the end, but yeah, we keep everybody a copy of the slides. We put them on Padlet, so I'll explain about Padlet if you're not familiar with it. So we'd just like to remind people that what you see as part of the T-level transition programme, you see it there because of what the overall purpose of the T-level transition programme is. And so it is that purpose in terms of being the progression route for those students whose intention is to move on to a T-level. That's why the T-level transition programme was obviously initiated, designed, developed all around that purpose. Now, there are obviously a lot of things happening in terms of qualifications at the moment, and obviously the level 2 review in terms of different programs of study and different purposes. And in a way, the T-level transition programme has been at the forefront of that, because that has always had that very clear purpose of being a study programme so that students can move on to T-level. I understand that some people, to do with issues of viability, numbers, etc., may be using a T-level transition programme for things that are other than this purpose, and that is not an issue, but you do have to remember that what's on the transition programme is there because of its purpose. So that's why when we talk about the technical component, when we talk about the core knowledge and skills, when we talk about it being a holistic and integrated approach, it's because it's all there in terms of being that preparation. So I think it is just worth a reminder of that before we then sort of launch into everything else in relation to the programme. Does that make some sense to those of you who have been delivering it previously? If I go Iceland, Rachel, as you are now to be known, yes.
Thank you.
Is that what your transition programme has been about then, Rachel? Has it really been focused on those students who are moving to T-level, or has yours been a bit wider than that?
It's been much wider than that. So we're doing the childcare and obviously the health. So I've only just taken over the lead of the health because it's been a bit of a tricky one. So I think our entry requirements weren't robust enough at the beginning.
Okay.
So we do have students on it that really probably won't progress to the T-level.
Okay.
So we've learned an awful lot this year about how it's going to look next year. And we haven't designed it enough around the T-levels, I don't think.
Okay, that's really interesting, Rachel. You can see sort of maybe then why it's always good to go back to that purpose.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think we've been in some interesting positions, haven't we, in terms of numbers of students as well, really. And who was going to be moving on and who wasn't. And also, as I say, we were in the middle of that review, weren't we? So it's possibly going to end up with things being a little bit clearer. I don't think
we were prepared enough for it, if I'm honest.
Right. Okay. No, that's great and really good of you to share that. And then perhaps if we're going through the rest of today, you can add in what you think you might be going to be changing as well, because that will be really interesting as well. Yeah. So other Rachel, Manchester Rachel. Same for you then, you're saying really in terms of the numbers and entry requirements, and certainly that's something we're going to touch on today. One of the things we particularly wanted to ask people about. Kirsty, I know you're in the planning stages and you've sort of been co-opted in. Have you got any thoughts on, are you seeing your T-level transition programme as very focused on this group of students who are moving to T-levels?
I mean, I'm working alongside Rachel, and so I'm covering sort of that area with Pauline. But yes, we're certainly looking at now for the future, for September, and what we, working almost stages backwards to get it into focus and into practice better.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. Great, Sarah Jane. That's again really good of you to say that you've learnt so much. Yeah, brilliant. I'll be really interested to hear about what you're thinking. You might want to change. So that might be a useful slide for you. Just when you're talking possibly to some senior leads about what the T-level transition programme, what it's for. It might also be something that'll be useful talking to colleagues as well about what the whole programme is aiming to do. Okay. So we then just use another couple of slides with our little diagrams on, and again, I'm sure a lot of you will have seen these, and even if you're not at that delivery stage in terms of your planning, if you've started looking at the framework for delivery document, you'll see these diagrams in there. So we talk very much about the transition programme having these 5 key areas, and within those 5 areas we have a range of core knowledge, skills and behaviours. And everything that's in there in terms of the areas and those core KSBs are in there because they are the things that we, DFE, believe will be the things that will really mean that students are therefore ready, not just to move on to a T-level, but also to be successful on that T-level. But the expectation is that students would develop those skills very much through practical application. There isn't an expectation that each of those areas is dealt with in isolation. And in a moment, when I show you our second diagram, that's when we focus very much on this idea of a holistic approach for the T-level transition programme. And what you do have with the T-level transition programme is that you do have quite a lot of flexibility in terms of how the 5 key areas are actually delivered within your programme. But we, and therefore students, can expect that they will be covered. These 5 areas will very much be covered. Our technical component falls in that sort of greeny coloured box, industry relevant technical knowledge and skills. So that's very much where our technical component is. And again, a lot of flexibility in terms of what you do with that technical component. For a lot of students, the dark blue English, maths, digital skills component, that's where they may be resitting either GCSE English, GCSE Maths, or possibly both of those. Again, people have different entry requirements. There are no entry requirements ever set, as you know, from a DFE point of view. So people may have different entry requirements for their transition programme. So that's the 5 areas that we talk about. The only thing that we do have in terms of the technical component is we do have these things called national technical outcomes. And again, those of you who have been delivering may be very familiar with these already. So those national technical outcomes are the things that we are saying must be covered as part of that technical component. But again, how you choose to cover those national technical outcomes is entirely up to you. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through this morning, but I just really wanted to set the scene with these few slides. So this is my very strange laptop. So this is our other diagram in terms of expectations for what you will be delivering. So we turn the 5 areas into 6 components, yeah, and that's only because of the way we've slightly split this now, because it was a bit unclear in the very first framework for delivery. But you can clearly see our English, maths and digital. You can see our technical knowledge and skills that I've been talking about. We also include in there the personal development and enrichment component. For a lot of students, then one of the reasons that they may not have been able to move up straight onto the T-level will not necessarily have been because of academic achievement. It may have been a lot of things to do around personal development, enrichment, could have been study skills, could have been self-confidence, could have been resilience. So all of that in terms of our core knowledge, skills and behaviours would be included within that component. There is also a component called experience of the workplace, which is a very carefully worded title. And if you've read the framework for delivery, you'll understand that whilst some actual real workplace setting experience would be fantastic within a T-level transition programme, it's not like it is on the T-level, where obviously it's that very fixed requirement with a set number of hours and the guidelines, etc. We do appreciate that it may be difficult, yeah, to source some placements, but there may be other ways that students can get that experience with employers, which may be going to Iceland. But it is still there, so it is something that still needs to be covered. The diagnostic monitoring and guidance and the pastoral support, we always include those. They are components, however, they really do encompass everything that we're doing, which is why the Venn diagram looks like it does. And we will talk a little bit more today about that diagnostic monitoring and guidance and how that's gone for those of you who have been delivering and perhaps what some of you are planning to do as part of that diagnostic monitoring guidance. But that's certainly something that we see as running throughout the T-level transition programme. That monitoring and guidance, so important to make sure that students are then ready to move on to the T-level. And we show the components in this way to really emphasise that holistic and integrated approach, and how what you might be doing as part of the technical component will then be really supporting students' personal development and enrichment, because of the things you might be putting in that technical component in terms of study skills, in terms of helping them build up their confidence, in terms of helping them respond to feedback. So lots of different ways in which people have delivered the T-level transition programme. So those are just our introductory slides. I can see that there's a few little comments in there as well. Okay. Yeah, Rachel, you've asked about the virtual learning as an experience for the workplace, guest speakers, different roles, etc. Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. You know, whatever really, we can get to work, and whatever gives students some exposure, perhaps to unfamiliar people, which may be employers. It's trying to develop all of those type of things.
Yeah.
It isn't fixed like it is on the T levels, where obviously they do need to be within an employer setting. We have tried to make it a little bit more flexible. What, I don't know if you can talk to us, all your students are there, Rachel?
No,
but,
no, I can talk. I can talk.
yeah,
The reason I'm asking that question is because when the review came in, they said they weren't happy with the virtual learning. That's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, I mean, review by who, Rachel?
You know, when we had the T-level survey review, they did a very big focus on transition in our college.
Okay, from Ofsted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they said the virtual learning potentially is not actually fit for purpose. But when you've got 105 learners on the course, it's hard, as you know, to find that. Plus,
and I think this is where
others.
I mean, obviously, I'm not going to say anything about Ofsted, but I think it's just been very careful about what the requirements are for the T level, isn't it? And what the requirements are for the T level transition program. I mean, obviously, it would be so much better if students could have a real, face-to-face in an employer setting experience. But like you say, it does depend very much, doesn't it, on what is going to be feasible.
Well, yeah, it is for us, because obviously we've got the T-level students, but we have a level 3 course and there's 300 odd students for that just on its own. And with majority of them being year ones, so it's then having an extra 105 student things today. It was just to kind of that experience of work placement. We were under the impression it could be various different things, but when Ofsted came in, they weren't too keen on that.
No, so I'd say not too keen would be okay. Yeah, I think we'd always try, and I'm saying we now from a DFE perspective, we'd always want to encourage that face-to-face, but as I say, unlike the T level, the transition program, you know, doesn't have those strict requirements. But obviously what we're saying is that the more they could do with real employers is really going to be better preparation for them when they go on to T level. That, I think that's all we're trying to get at, isn't it, Rachel?
Yeah, it definitely is. Some of the students are going out on doing placement, but
Right.
we are still limited to where we can go. Quite a few of them are at the charity shops. Some of them have got into homes and some have got into pharmacy, but it's that battle then of other students, etc., trying to find
that's it. We wouldn't want T level students not to secure placements because of a transition student, because obviously then a T level student wouldn't get their T level if they hadn't done their hours.
Definitely our T levels are struggling at the moment because of the strikes. So they were supposed to go last week and it got cancelled because of the strike, and they're out now. They are.
Sarah, I can see your question about, thanks Rachel, I can see your question about cash, and we're certainly going to come on to talk about that in terms of how people have delivered the technical knowledge and skills component. So I'm not ignoring it. I'm just parking it for a little bit, if that.
All right, thank you.
Is that okay? So because we know it's something that everybody's keen to talk about, and I'll also talk about at the very end of this morning. I'll also talk about what's happening potentially in the future as well. So it's certainly something that we're gonna cover. Is that okay? Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, thank you.
Where are we up to now? Okay. Oh, I can see we've got a few more people joining us as well. So that's great. Hiya, Helen.
Hello, sorry, I'm late. We had a safeguarding issue. So
it's all right. No, don't need to apologise to me. I'm just saying hi because I didn't see you before. Where are you from, Helen?
Nelson and Co.
Oh, hiya, Helen. We may well have met before.
Yeah,
I don't know. As I have been in to see. Yeah, I have been in, haven't I, a few times? Yeah. And obviously you're delivering the transition programme at the moment, Helen?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And is it health and science is your particular area?
No, I'm standing in for the health and science teacher. She's teaching this.
So it's all this. We've got a lot of people who've been co-opted. I think there's a lot of volunteering going on at the moment, isn't there?
Yeah. No, I'm interested to find out more. So. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Which is your subject area, Helen?
I'm sports, so it's not a T level, but I am curriculum leader, so I need an overview of it.
Yeah, brilliant. No, that's great. Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Okay, thank you. So those were really the three slides that I just wanted to make sure that we had covered, so that we had that context. I'm just doing a quick number count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Trying to work out how many there is. Okay, I don't think it's probably going to be worth sending you into breakout rooms, because there'll only be a couple of you in each one. So I think we'll just, let me just count. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can tell I'm not very good at application number, can't you? 5, 6, 7. Oh, we'll get 4 of you. Abby, how many will we end up in each breakout room?
So we've got 8 people, but there's 9 with the 2 that are sharing a screen.
Okay. Let's just come. We will do a 4 and a 5, Abby, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Okay. I'll just let everybody know what we're doing, and then if we'll do the rooms after that. Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. Just to give us a little chat to really talk through some of the bits and pieces that are already coming up in the chat. We will go into groups in a little while, not for long, probably just for 10 minutes or so. But what I'm going to ask you in terms of when you move on into the groups, 3 questions really, and I'll come into one, and Lauren will go into the other, so that we can answer some of your questions as well. This whole notion around, did you get the students you thought you were going to get on T-level transition programme, but also in terms of reflecting back now on who that student cohort was it actually the right student cohort? And I know a couple of you have already added some bits and pieces in about that. Thinking now perhaps about entry requirements, were they right? What will you be doing if you haven't delivered transition programme yet? So that whole notion around those students who were coming in and what you were really expecting from them. Then we'll have a chat about these core knowledge, skills and behaviours, and how you have managed to really come to terms with that integrated and a holistic approach, and how you have perhaps managed to get some of those core knowledge, skills and behaviours while you have been delivering your technical knowledge and skills component, which really then leads on to this bit, which is the one that I know you're all adding your comments into the chat about. So we have these national technical outcomes. So for health and science, there are 4 national technical outcomes. So there is a learning outcome. Then there is a outcome which is around preparing. There's an outcome which is around applying some skills, either in a health or healthcare science context or in a science context. This is one of the few routes for the T-level transition programme where there is actually an option within the national technical outcomes. So you would either do 3A or 3B in terms of the national technical outcomes. And then there's a final outcome, which is around interpreting health and science data. So those national technical outcomes are the things that we say that must be covered, but how you cover them is entirely up to you. And so it may be that you have used a cash level 2 qualification, and you have been able to cover those national technical outcomes through that cash level 2 qualification, you may have decided, or you may be going to decide, not to use a qualification at all and actually use those national technical outcomes and the knowledge and skills and behaviours that underpin them to actually develop your own schemes of learning. Again, that's absolutely fine, and we do have a number of providers who are doing that. So there isn't a fixed way in terms of how you would deliver those national technical outcomes, but you do need to be able to demonstrate that they've been covered. So that's one of the other things that we'll talk about when we move into just some very quick breakout rooms. So you can make a note of the questions, but both myself and Lauren, who are going to join you, I've got those questions as well, and I'm sure our discussions will be quite wide-ranging anyway. So if Abby puts up the, thanks Sarah Jane, that's great as well in terms of what you're doing. So Abby, I'll put the things up now, and if you can just click on and join, then that should hopefully take us into the rooms. We'll just carry on. It's much easier just to talk to all of you at the same time. So we'll just carry on really where we are. So we've talked quite a bit about the sort of entries. Is there anything else in terms of entry requirements and expected cohorts that anybody wants to say something about that they haven't, or ask somebody else a question about? Please just jump in.
Can I just say something about what we've done with our entry requirements? Because we're still running BTEC alongside, we've got 2 groups of level 2 BTECs this year, and we're running 1 group of transition. Next year, we've got 2 groups of transition forecast and 1 group of BTEC. So we're slowly moving it over. However, what we have found is that we have creamed off the top from the level 2 students. So our level 2 candidates, or students, sorry, are not achieving as highly as they would do normally, as in a group wise for figures, because we have taken all the ones with the higher grades onto transition. I don't know if anybody else has found that.
Hi, so this is our 3rd year running the transition, and we've tried different ways. So the biggest problem we've had this year is that everyone's been on the transition course. So it's actually taken us away from picking out those top students, because the way we had it planned didn't work out how we wanted it planned because of the students coming in with what they needed. So we've gone from 4 groups to 6 groups. We have done of transition. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not worked. We've had big issues because out of those 6, I don't say 10 are going to go potentially look at T levels. What we tried to do was to look at our entry requirements, that they had to have maths, English and science. Because of the T levels, we've tried to put science in, and we're actually delivering GCSE biology this year, but the only people who could do the GCSE biology if they had to have maths or English at grade 4, because you couldn't fit all 3 in the timetable. But then we gave them a taster of science sessions to keep the knowledge up, because if they go to T levels or go to our cash, there's quite a lot of science units in there. And we then made anatomy and physiology one of the units to keep it going, and we've set that as exam based, what then puts them ready for T levels, because T levels is an exam based in the anatomy and physiology area. One of the things I would just looking from the experience of this year with I would say if you can keep your BTEC, Sarah, if you've got your BTEC, keep your BTEC and have a separate transition course, because that we found that because of the sizes of groups, we're losing those students who could potentially be the top students and go to T levels, but because of the way their maths and English, we're not getting that. So that's one of the biggest issues we've had this year. But we fitted in the science, and the students have enjoyed the science, but made it very practical based and element really. And that's what we've done. And one thing we need to look at is the technical side, because we did have a nurse. We had 2 nurses started. One didn't stay. The other one did, but needed for T levels. So that is an area we need to look at of how we can build that technical side for us.
On your transition
On the
program,
transition
to keep
program,
that, keep it interesting and motivating as well.
Yeah, and we're looking at change. I don't know at the moment that we're waiting for management to kind of say what we're doing really, but we've been running the cash level 2 transition, but what we're finding, that's great for your students who maybe academically aren't well, you want them for T level, but those who are T level potentially need your T level students, that it's not strong enough. So we've maybe looking at changing that, because even like I think it's A star is only a describe, where if you did the BTEC, it's an evaluate, and that's more the words they use at T levels or level 3 standard. So we're finding the qual's actually not strong enough either. We can stretch and challenge these students, but I don't know about everyone else, but we're finding these students who have come through the door with the grades 3s and 4s, they're not at that standard. So we're having to do a lot of upskilling as well.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. Were you going to come in, Sarah?
Yeah, I was, but I think I'm okay. Thank you.
You're right. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about entry requirements. We've obviously talked quite a bit there about how you covered the NTOs, how they've actually featured within your delivery strategies. The one bit we probably just didn't quite touch on was the core knowledge, skills and behaviours. Sarah, I think you mentioned about the fact that you obviously have a lot more time with them this year, and that that's how you've perhaps been able to get some of those core knowledge, skills and behaviours in. Would you agree that that's how you've managed to do it?
I think absolutely, because every lesson it's right, we're here to do this, this is what we're focusing on, and every lesson you can reiterate and guide, and they all know where they are. I think it's definitely is down to student base and who comes through the doors. I have had students just drop off because they've fallen out with friends, and there's nothing that I can do about that at all. But yeah, I do think having those different days for different parts of the course has really helped. But I do think front load short and sharp the qualification, so they can leave with something and then focus more time on getting them ready for the T levels. Yeah, I'm running a mini ESP after Easter.
Oh, okay, brilliant. That's yeah.
So yeah. And it's not a massive project, but it should in a small way mirror what the T levels are doing on their ESP.
Yeah. So obviously we have that requirement as part of the T-level transition program for a route-based project, yes, but again the guidance on that is quite flexible, so you can then turn that into more of an employer-set project style, yes, like you say, to perhaps give that prep for.
I did go on training to Weston-super-Mare just before Christmas or after Christmas, and we ran through different projects that you could do with them. However, I think it will be more beneficial if you utilise the same paperwork, so they know what they're going to expect, put them in the position that they will be in when they're on T level, so they know if they are really underconfident and suffer with anxiety, it might not be the best course for them, and we can guide them onto different routes, because we have had on T-level students who won't stand up or won't answer questions because of various personal reasons and things. So I think the more we practice with them, and also exam conditions as well, so being able to have that time definitely has helped. And when you're working with them, especially on for myself with a large amount of time, I can see who is requiring more of one thing or another.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. That's really good. Thank you ever so much. Brilliant. Iceland, Rachel, have you managed to incorporate the core knowledge and skills behaviours that are required? Have you managed to get some of that into your technical component, or do you think that's being delivered as part of pastoral, or how do you think that's worked for you?
Probably a little bit more in like the pastoral side of it, really. A lot of our students do need a lot of support, and it's interesting what you're saying about presentations. I think that's going forward, that's something we're going to try and do quite a lot of, just to get them used to like doing their own research as well, and being able to think for themselves. just been able to like have the confidence to present.
Yeah, because that in the framework for delivery, in terms of those core knowledge and skills, obviously those things around communication, researching, critical thinking, problem solving, they are all the ones that are in our framework, because we sort of realise they are the things, aren't they, that some of these students really struggle with, but then they are the things that if we don't help them with, they're not going to really be successful on their T level, are they? So it's trying to get those in there.
So we're changing from after Easter, we're going to like change the structure of our timetable. So there's 3 of us teaching on it. We're all having I'm doing person-centered care, somebody else is doing safeguarding, and somebody else is doing health and well-being.
Okay.
That was what our T-level tutor said would be quite beneficial. And then they're going to have a project day as well, where we set them a project to do. Hopefully then that will support their skills, knowledge and behaviour as well.
Yeah, to get those in as well. And I think it is really worth looking at, and I'll show you a couple of documents in a minute that might be useful. But yeah, because doing some mapping of those core knowledge, skills and behaviours, whether they're in the pastoral support or whether they're included in technical, like you say, Rachel Manchester, that you've got some in your pastoral support. I think it's just making sure that they definitely are there. And I think that notion of, it's not just being able to do a project, but it's being able to, as I think you were saying, Sarah, understand the requirements. So actually I've got to sit in this room for an hour and produce the plan, and I can't take it away and rewrite it 15 times. I actually have to do it within this hour. And that's quite tricky, isn't it? A lot of them really struggle with that sort of thing. They're just not used to it, are they? That's not what's been the thing. So it's something about that way of working that we've also got to perhaps get included within the transition programme as well, isn't it? So
not taking the first thing that Google tells them.
Yeah, well, that's obviously, if it's on Wikipedia, then that is the answer, isn't it? Really. So that's my research finished, isn't it? Because it said it on Wikipedia. But I think that, I know it's hard, isn't it? But we can't expect them, can we, when they get onto T level, to necessarily have all that if we haven't really helped them get all that within their transition year. So so Rachel, you're looking at a project after May half term, and I know we did some sessions. I think that's the one you were mentioning, Sarah, that you went to, that my colleague Elise probably did. And one of the things we did on that was really looking at some ideas for route-based projects, but also then really thinking about the timing maybe of where those route-based projects would fit within your delivery strategy, which then sort of links back to that question about how are you covering the national technical outcomes, and my question about whether if you're doing a qual, it does help you cover those, because actually the other way is that a route-based project, which might mirror some of the ESP, could actually also really help you cover some of those national technical outcomes as well. So
that would be my kind of ideal, really, to do it. So it's all
to be able to try and do that.
One of the issues that we've got, though, is the NCFE cash that we are running throughout the year. If the students don't pass that, then they don't achieve as far in the college's eyes, because they're looking at numbers. So those students I've got at the moment focusing on just that this week. That then leaves the other students to have to work on other things. So I've had to give them intermediate projects to work on whilst the other students are catching up. Because obviously you've got the college pulling you one way, and then, you know, NCFE pulling you the other.
So I'll tell you what, Sarah, we're just gonna park that one, because in a bit we're going to do a question about what do students need to achieve to get on their from their transition to their T level. So we'll just park that one for a minute, because I think it's a really interesting one. As to what we're actually asking some of these students to do. I'm just gonna try. Before I share my screen, I just ask you, you can just do me a hands up or whatever if you want. do any of you use our T-level transition program Padlet and the resources that are on there? Have any of you made use of it or not? I'm not seeing any definite nods and jumping up and down with excitement. So I'll tell you about the Padlet then first before I show you anything. So we have a Padlet, and what we've got on that Padlet is anything that would have been produced in terms of any events or sessions, or like the project thing that you mentioned, Sarah, that you went to. So when we collate all of that, yeah, we do put all of that onto Padlet, okay? But as well as all of those things, there are also on there some specific resources that DFE commissioned AOC to produce. None of them are things that you must use. They're not like, you know, T-level forms that have to be filled in or anything like that. But there's an awful lot of stuff on there that you might find would be really helpful for you in terms of, now that some of you are at the reviewing stage of your programs, or some of you who are perhaps at that planning and implementation stage. So just linking in obviously with the questions that we've just been thinking about there. So yeah, we'll put the overall, when I say we, I'll ask Abby to put the link into chat for you in a moment, Sarah, so that you can get to everything. So for example, let's see if we can see this one. So can you see that Word document that's on there at the moment?
Yeah.
So obviously we were talking about entry requirements, weren't we? And a lot of you may already have within college this notion of expected student profiles. And so this is one that we came up with in terms of transition program. So you could really set up your perfect student, if you like, on this expected student profile, what they would be able to do in terms of their English and their maths, etc. And that might be a GCSE grade, or it might be some particular skills. So, you know, Rachel, you were talking about presentation and communication. So maybe what you want to have on here is that they will be able to, yeah, stand up and give effective presentations, that type of thing. You might expect them in terms of digital to be able to use Word or to use a spreadsheet. Under technical, you know, there might be some things that you want them to do. You might not have anything in that box. You might not have an expectation in terms of their skills in relation to health. But you might have some expectations in terms of time management. You might have some expectations in terms of their attendance. You may then want to specify some specific qualification grades, like we were just talking about in terms of 3s and 4s. So you could set one of these up as what you would expect, but then what you can look at is in terms of when you do get your actual students, perhaps where they don't quite meet that expected. And then that'll give you a really good starting point, perhaps, as to what you've got to work on. Does that make any sense, the way I've just explained that?
Yeah, I like that, but I think that would be quite good. The students could use something like that as, you know, like a starting point for themselves as well.
Yeah, and that's what I say. So any of the documents that we have up on there, they're entirely for you to use. We give a little bit of a background, like I just did there, as to what the document might be used for and how you might possibly use it. But that's literally all they're there for, is in terms of for you to make use of. Now I'll just show you
Have
another
you got
one.
any feedback as to the online tracking that NCFE produced? Because we staff suggested that we would like to use it. We went to training for it, but it never happened. I think you have to buy it in individually.
Yeah, if it's an award organisation one, Sarah, we wouldn't know about it, because it's an NCFE specific product, really, so we wouldn't know about that one. Yeah, I'll show you another one, another document that we've got up there. Again, it's nothing fancy, you know, but it's just that it's already been put together for you, if you like. So it might be something that's worth using. And all this one is just a very basic spreadsheet, but we've been talking about those core knowledge, skills and behaviors. And so what we've literally done is we've taken the stuff that's in the delivery framework, obviously down the left hand side, in terms of what's expected, team working, travel training, or all those type of things that are under the core knowledge, skills and behaviors. These are obviously the delivery components that I was talking about earlier. And so all we're saying there is, can you actually map where you are covering some of those core knowledge, skills and behaviors? And that might be lots of ticks in your pastoral personal development enrichment. That might be when they're doing their experience of the workplace component, but at least you would then have a notion that those core knowledge, skills and behaviors were being covered, which would hopefully be really helpful in terms of knowing that your students were getting those covered. But also, if you were ever asked to show by, I don't know, Ofsted on a survey review, how you were covering this core knowledge, skills and behaviors, you would have something that would be able to do that as well. So there's just lots of little different types of documents like that on the Padlet that will be useful for you. It's organized in terms of things like planning, and then there might be a whole section which is on diagnostic monitoring and guidance. There might be another section. So you just need to whiz yourself through all the little sections, and we'll put the link in. But the other person who'd be really helpful to you in terms of finding out about Padlet, so you do all have a Lauren equivalent. Is that true, Lauren? Yeah, do you just want to briefly explain? Oh, thank you, Lauren.
There you go. So I have just put the link in for Padlet in the chat box. So with the AOC, each of you will have an AOC advisor. So our role is to help you with your planning and delivering of the T-levels and the TLTP. So we do speak to a range of different advisors. Again, as you said, it's very much ownership of you guys with your own courses and things, but we can advise you and say what others are doing. So for example, where you were talking about the entry requirements, I can tell you that a few of mine that I've been speaking to providers have said, when for transition, we want them to have either their English or their maths instead of coming on for both. So it's sort of the conversations that we have to others that we can then sort of share that information with you. But again, it's not a one sort of shoe fits all. It's what's going to be best for you. So again, as I said, we can, any questions, any emails, anything at all that you want questions for, you want some guidance with something, then by all means, please do get in touch and we can help you. If you're not sure on who your advisor is, then please just put something in the chat box, and then I can make sure at the end of the meeting that you are aware of who your advisor is, and I'll ask them to also get into contact with you.
Yeah, and they're the sort of person as well, Lauren, who could go through the stuff on Padlet as well, and they show people, but also tell you what events are coming up and all that type 100%. Of thing as well. So,
we've got a full range of resources and things. So we've got events happening quite often. So again, we can send out links and things to those to help.
Yeah,
okay, I'll make notes of that. So Sarah, I'll make a note of that one and I'll let you know shortly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're not sure, if we can find out, but the other person who would know is if you have a T-level lead within your college, that might be the person who's been speaking to the Lauren equivalent, etc. So they might also know as well. Okay. Are you all okay to carry on? Does anybody need a quick comfort break, or are you all okay? Julian, Kirsty, Rachel, you okay to just carry on? Yeah, everybody all right? Yeah, fine. Yep. Okay, brilliant. Okay. I'd just like to make sure. Don't want to keep anybody. Okay, let's go back to where we were. We've started a little bit of some of our next set of questions, but I think we didn't really answer them fully. So let's have a little think about some of these ones. Just 1 minute, guys, because it's not letting me share for some bizarre reason. So We love Teams and Zoom, don't we? It's our favourite, isn't it? Yeah, we're doing well getting it to work from Iceland, I think, Rachel. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good connection, isn't it?
I know, it's not bad, is it? We do have free Wi-Fi, so
yeah, that's good then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Let's get it onto slideshow. Right. Okay. Hopefully you can see it. So this was the one that we wanted to touch on. Yes, it's a component, but you know, it is that one that needs to be integrated throughout the other components and across the whole program. And I know that as providers, you will already have a whole range of fantastic diagnostic activities at the beginning of a program. All I ask you to think about is it doing what you need it to do for transition? That will just be my first little thought, okay? Then throughout the program, there is obviously the expectation, as I know you will be doing, yeah, that students' progress will obviously be monitored, and therefore they will get guidance to ensure that they can successfully complete that transition program, but also that what they're doing is then going to help them to progress and to be successful on their T level. So you might want to just start now thinking about what is your progress and monitoring strategy as part of your transition program. So do they have those regular reviews, and are those regular reviews planned? Are they in your technical component? Do you do those against those core KSBs? What sort of feedback are they getting? How is that really helping them in terms of reflective practice so that they can really build up their confidence, etc.? So just that whole thing around, what's your initial diagnostic and monitoring? How is your progress and monitoring and progress strategy really working on your T-level transition program? So we're not going to go into groups, but just in terms of questions that we've thought of that go with that. The first one, and this is what I was just asking you about a minute ago, really, Sarah, to just park for a little bit, was what do students need to achieve to say, A, they've been successful on T-level transition program and that they can move on to their T-level? What have you actually put in to your program in terms of formative assessment, particularly in terms of that technical component? And I know we've already mentioned practice ESPs, possible practice exams, etc. And then if I came now into your setting, into your provider settings, and I wanted to be able to actually see how students could demonstrate those different outcomes on the national technical outcomes, would you be able to show me that students actually can demonstrate achievement against those outcomes? Okay, and you might be able to do that through the fact that they've done a particular qualification and you can show me how that outcome has been mapped or whatever, or it may be that they did a project where they actually were doing investigate health and science data, which is outcome 4 for our health and science route. So there would be different ways that you could possibly show me that students have demonstrated achievement against those outcomes. But I think these are really tricky questions. And I think sometimes this is where, when you're now able to reflect on your transition program, you might want to have a little think, is there anything that you need to be doing differently? So I'm going to stop sharing because I can see you and I've got the questions anyway. I'll come to that very first question around what we're actually asking students to achieve to be successful on their T-level transition program. So I'm here, Julian. I'm on your transition program for health and science. What is it that I've got to actually do to be successful on that T-level transition program? I already had my GCSE English, but I've been doing my GCSE maths with you. So what is it, Julian, that I've got to do to achieve my T-level transition program?
Well, as it stands at the moment, maths is one thing you would need.
So I've got to get my GCSE, I've got to get my maths at grade, I've got to get my maths at grade
4 and above. Yeah.
So
although
by
I
the end of
think,
my, yeah,
possibly, I think possibly this year we were looking at 5s, this current cohort, and that will be maths, English, and science as well.
Okay, so by the end of my by the end of my transition program, I've got to have all 3 of those GCSEs at a grade 5.
Yeah, I would also be expecting you to achieve the 6 units for the NCFE that we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, and also the 4 units for the OCR.
Okay.
That would be completed as well.
If I'm not picking on you, honestly, Julian, but
yeah,
you know where this question's going to go, right? So if I came to you straight from school and I had a grade 5 in GCSE science, 1 in English and 1 in maths, yeah?
You have 5s in all of those?
Sorry, I've got 5s in all 3 of those, plus I've got a host of others, yeah?
Yeah.
Would you be asking me to have that OCR and that NCFE qualification?
I mean, if you've got grade 5s and above, yeah, for all of them, does that make sense? Depending on what your other grades are, I wouldn't be pushing you towards a level 2 sort of transition. I'd be looking
No, I'd go straight onto my T level, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
What?
Or
something else, yeah.
Or 3 single A levels, whatever it might be.
Whichever. Yeah. The bit I'm really getting at is, and we've had this discussion with a lot of providers, is if I come straight from school, it's about my GCSE grades, yeah? It's not about me having a technical qualification. So are we now saying that because we've put the technical qualification on the transition program, yeah, to cover the NTOs, that actually what we've done now is we've now expecting transition students to do more than we're expecting those students who come in directly from school? Sarah, go on. Yeah. I can see them nodding, so go on. What do you reckon?
I think it's really difficult, isn't it? And we are expecting an awful lot more of them. And I've got a document that I've recently compiled that shows an overall attendance, what their punctuality is, what their grade is at maths, what their grade is at English, how many hours of placement they've done, have they passed the qualification, and then a recommendation by me as the program leader. And this is what I'm passing on to the program leader of T levels, whether I think they'll be a suitable candidate going forward. And I have these conversations with students all the way through the course, and they know that if they don't get placement, then it might not be for them to go forward onto T levels because they might not enjoy it, they don't want to go out on it, or whatever the reason is. And that's as far as I've got with that. But I do think we're asking an awful lot of these students, and that's where a couple of mine have dropped off, I think, because we're trying to get
and that's more. All I think it's just some sense of fairness between our transition students, yeah, and our direct entry, yeah, onto T-level students. You know, that's what I'm just trying to get at. I don't know whether either Rachel wants to add anything to that.
Hi, Shan. We actually for the last 2 years we've done T-level and transition summer schools. The transition summer schools haven't been effective because everyone's been put on it in hindsight, but the T-level has been effective for my colleague who runs that. So in that those T-level summer school, he does assessments with them and chats to them, interviews, and does assessments, activities in the classroom and outside for them to do at home to see whether are these capable of T-level. And then if he's not, he'll have a conversation with them and they'll then potentially go and do our cash level 3. If they are suitable and he feels that they could do it, they will continue on the T-level.
So would everybody do that, Rachel, whether I'd done my transition program or whether I was coming straight from school?
Yes. So we would ask the students who transition from our current course to T-levels would be expected to attend. So anyone who comes for T-levels for interview evening prior to the event, we tell them we're expecting you there. Now, obviously, you get some people who can't because of holidays, etc. So my colleague uses the first month to do assessments as well in that period to see whether they are suitable or not. And students quickly learn themselves if they're not suitable or not.
Yeah, but it's just this thing, isn't it? I suppose that I am just concerned that we may be asking transition students to do a little bit too much. I don't know. Iceland, Rachel, what are your thoughts on, because you don't do the qual, do you? So that's
no. So I think for hours at the moment, I personally don't think we're asking hours to do enough.
Right, okay.
Yeah. But I think going forward for the next cohort, we will be asking them to do probably a lot more. And I like the idea of kind of like the summer school, but I don't know how committed our students would be, if I'm honest, to come in over the summer, but certainly something much stricter when they start in September to see, again, if the transition programme is suitable for them. But I think as well, we're also looking at how we word our, like the transition programme in the T-level, if we have it as a 3-year T-level.
Which many people do. They call it pre-T, they call it 3-year T, you know, that's and then you set up that expectation right from the start, don't you really? But I think, like Sarah was saying earlier though, so there's also this idea, isn't it, that actually they don't need to get a qualification, but what they do need to do is to pass, whatever that means, a mini employer set project, because actually that's a better judge assessment of whether they're then going to be successful, or they can do 3 really good presentations, or they can, you know, whatever it is. And I suppose but I still understand that you have other pressures, in terms of getting a qualification, but you know, there is no requirement, and I have to, you know, say it a few times, there is no requirement for students to get a qualification as part of the T-level transition programme, should you choose not to do it. And you also know that we have a number of providers who, rather than doing technical qualifications, may do project qualifications. They may do smaller qualifications, so they might do first aid, and they might do health and safety, and they might do food hygiene, and they might do all those sort of qualifications. You will still get, when I say your college school will still get funding for a T-level transition programme if you don't have a technical qualification in it. There is no
I do like the idea.
Julian's smiling. Are you having a panic, Julian, about no qualification? Because it's hard, isn't it? Because students expect it, parents expect it. If the students don't go on to T-level, what do they have? It's all those questions, isn't it?
It is. I mean, from my point of view, personally, you know, I think you need to achieve a qualification in order to be able to move on to the next quote, because you know that to me is the real world. And you know, for a student to go on to it, being the right student, again, right student, right course, if they can achieve this, if they can show that they can apply, they can commit, you know, and it's genuinely what they want to do. Let's be real. Like I say to some of my students, in 30 years' time, you might be caring for me in the local hospital.
It's always scary. It's always scary, that, isn't it, Julian?
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, it's just the thing that I've been used to. So, you know, I've over the years taught on the BTEC courses, and in order to go onto university, you have to get you have to achieve with certain grades, etc.
I know, and I don't. It's not me saying one way or the other, but I suppose my only concern, like I say, is that fairness element of then when we're saying what is it that we're actually asking students to do to be successful on the T-level transition programme, and let's not now make it harder for those students to get on a T-level than we are asking for some of our direct entry students.
I mean, the thing is, a T-level is not for everyone.
No, I think that's
for me, it's a real shame that you know, we're running out the level 3 BTEC in health and social care.
Yeah, that's a
because-
difficult one, isn't it? Yeah.
You know, we've had level 2 students over the years come up who've done like an OCR level 2 qualification, come out with an overall distinction, and then they're able to go on to
to next level. Yeah. It's
And-
hard. It's hard. We're in a really weird place, I think, at the moment. One of the other questions before I
Sharon, sorry, just to interrupt you, just a quick
of course you can, Rachel.
what we've done, because all our students are on the transition course this year, we've got a handful who are either going to adult learning or they want to be social workers, so they don't even want to be in that industry. So what we're doing to help them is, well, look at being prepared for T levels, or to look at whether they're suitable. They're actually after in May going to be doing 2 or 3 lessons a week with the T level tutor to see whether they would be suitable to help build their what's going to be expected of them, what they're expecting the course, and what the level it's going to be like.
Yeah, and that's what. So a lot of people have avoided sort of a level 2 qual, if you like, on the T level transition program, but then towards the end of their T level transition program, they've looked perhaps at a bit of a 2.5 level 3 type unit, or they've looked at, I think, like you were saying, Rachel, about some of the bits that are on the T level, like the safeguarding and the health and well-being and all those, and perhaps looking at using some of that content. That's the other way to do it, to see how they cope. So it's more about their coping strategies, I suppose, isn't it, then, for moving on to T level. And one of the other ways, and I think we touched on this, and this is sort of one of those, that second question about the formative assessment that you're using on your T level transition program. So I think, Sarah, you mentioned the sort of mini ESP, whether any of you have included exam type, formative assessments, So, did you put some of those in as well, Julian? Because they wouldn't have been part of your quals, presumably, would they?
No, that tends to be the sort of biology, chemistry, and sort of physicsy side of things. Whereas, you're right, Sharon, the NCFE and the OCR stuff is assignment sort of based in that, which is which to me is quite a nice mix.
It develops some of the skills. It
does. In time, if they then want to go off to university, they've got to get used to writing. And it's not just exams.
And it is trying to get that mix, isn't it, between developing some skills, getting them used to T level assessments, but not actually scaring them so much that then they definitely don't want to go on to the T level, and that is quite tricky, isn't it? But what's not going to change, whatever else changes with T levels, what's not going to change is the fact that you've got the exams and you've got that project, and then you've got the OS assessment, and those are big assignment type things, aren't they, where students, like we say, have to perform within a short space of time, really. So it's how you do get them used to that. So a lot of people have certainly included exams, and obviously the NTOs for health and science, as I mentioned earlier, there is that learning outcome which is just knowledge, and so that is the sciencey one, and that's obviously the one that a lot of people have then taken and used as a formative assessment opportunity. Okay.
So I think we're doing, when we go back after Easter, where we set topics. So we're going to do a topic, and then they're going to have 5 weeks of teaching the topic, and then the last week they're going to have a written exam.
Yeah, they're going to do it. They're going to
do it so that's going to be new for after Easter for us.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good plan as well, Rachel. I think you've got to get them into that notion, and I think obviously, okay. I'm conscious that it's 22. We've had some really fantastic discussions. There's just a few little bits and pieces that I want to round up with, but that doesn't mean that we can't still ask some questions and stuff, but I'll do these few little bits to make sure that we've covered those. So if you just bear with me while I attempt to do the share screen. Kirsty, you all right? I know I haven't asked you to come in, but I didn't want you to come in if you weren't sure what you're talking about. But have you got some questions answered that you needed answering? That's all I want to make sure.
Yeah, no, it's been really informative.
Right, that's good. I didn't want to, ask you if you then weren't going to be able to answer. So, but I wasn't. I wasn't trying to ignore you.
No, it's been great, and it's actually good to see other people, faces and names that we could actually, pull information from as well. Kind of that collaborative. That really works well for them. Can we have a bit more info? So yeah, no, it's been brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just tell you a little few things here. So we don't need definite answer from you for these. I know some of you already talked about that in previous cohorts. Perhaps your percentage of students who've moved on to T levels has not been, as good as you would have hoped. I wonder whether perhaps this year it will be better. If anybody does want to comment, please feel free to put something in chat about that. We've obviously tried to prompt you, I suppose, this morning to think about some of those questions that you might want to incorporate within your programme review of the T-level transition programme for health and science. I would also say to you that on Padlet, again, there is a document on there. I know you will all have your own school and college review and eval documents, but again, there's another document on there, a specific review and evaluation document that perhaps asks some of those questions that are a bit more specific to T-level transition programme. So that again might be something that you want to go and have a look at to see if that would help you with your review. What I just wanted to make sure that we had mentioned I wasn't sure whether you would all be aware that there is currently a department for education consultation in terms of the national technical outcomes for the T-level transition programme. So what this consultation is, and I know there is a lot of consultations around at the moment, there is a big off-qual one, obviously in terms of level 2 quals, but this one, which I think that the date is 6th of April, so you've still got a week or so. This consultation is very specifically about whether those national technical outcomes should be turned into qualifications by awarding organisations. So at the moment, you are all using a range of different qualifications and you are doing some mapping to then say this NTO is covered here, this bit's covered here, whatever. What DFE is saying is, would you prefer if we allowed the awarding organisations to take those national technical outcomes and actually turn them into a qualification? Then there's a couple of questions that go with that in terms of if that is something that was allowed, then what would we allow awarding organisations to do in terms of changes to those national technical outcomes, or what would we allow awarding organisations to do in terms of the assessment for those qualifications. It's not a very long consultation. I think there's only 6 questions. And that's really the nub of it. There's some questions that are specifically for the awarding organisations, but for you as providers, those are really the questions that we're asking. So there's some of you who are obviously using awarding organisation quals at the moment. There's some of you who aren't. Yes. I don't know. Rachel, from your perspective in Iceland, would you want to see the NTOs turned into a qualification, or are you quite happy not having them as a qualification at the moment?
So I didn't like the idea of not a qualification because I've taught qualifications for so long. It's quite hard to get your head around it. But I do quite like the idea of not having a qualification. However, it needs to be strong enough for the students to progress onto the T level.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, it isn't a waste, like a wasted year.
No.
But
yeah. And so obviously the NTOs were always designed looking very much at the T level. So that's why the indication would be that then there would be a qualification. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think it's just it's your starting point that's important, isn't it? If you get your starting point right with the students and their entry requirements, then hopefully you've got a good, you know, solid, you know, career pathway really onto a T level.
Yeah. But for, you know, I think it is an interesting dilemma as to whether we do that with the NTOs. Yeah. So if you do have some views, any of you, it would be great if you just filled in that little consultation. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that in a minute.
So you'll get the slides as Abby said. So then the other thing to say to you is that our last set of events for this academic year in terms of technical focus groups, there are other transition events, but in terms of technical focus groups, we will have one final face-to-face meeting. Now we're inviting those of you who are currently delivering and those who are planning to deliver T-level transition programs to these events. Because these are face-to-face, we don't try to run them route specific, because that would just be too many events in too many places. But some of you may have been to the ones that we've run previously. So what we do at those is, obviously, if there is 4 health and science people, then we'll probably get you to work together. So although they're not route specific, you still get that opportunity to meet people from your route and talk to them. So depending obviously on where you're located, you can see which one might be the most suitable for you, if that's something that you would like to attend. We will look particularly around the whole holistic delivery, one of the things we haven't talked very much about today is English, maths and digital. So that's one of the things that we will focus on when we're at that event. And then obviously I have mentioned Padlet today. We've had a quick look at a couple of the bits and pieces around there, but honestly, there's a whole host of other stuff that you could make use of. So again, do go away and have a look at that after today. And really our next slide, again, we don't ask you to verbalize this, but you've had now a lot, hopefully, of information, and there's been really good sharing in terms of what you've all been up to. So now perhaps have a think about who do you want to go and talk to first in terms of where you might be going with your T-level transition program for health and science. I've introduced you to some things on Padlet, mentioned the framework for delivery, obviously mentioned the national technical outcomes, a lot of things which you are familiar with, but what is it you might want to go and have a way and look at, so that you can then perhaps identify what your first action is going to be. So just some bits and pieces there for you to have a think about. Abby is going to put a little poll up here. That's always who we need to go and talk to, Rachel, is your senior managers. That's always the issue. So Abby's going to put a little poll up in a minute, just in terms of how today's been. So if you wouldn't mind filling in that'd be fantastic. But I'd say now, if there is something that you really wanted to get an answer from today that you haven't had chance to, do either just stick your hand up, shout out, put something in chat, or indeed, if you do think of something after this little session, then do please get in touch with us. We're more than happy to try to answer any questions, or if you think there's something at the next event that you'd particularly like to see, you know, again, do just let us know that. We're more than happy to try and answer any of those. So it has been really lovely to talk to you all, and certainly to meet some of you the first time and some of you again. That's been absolutely brilliant. Anything else anybody wanted to ask about, or are we all happy bunnies to go away and get our lunch? Yeah, I'm intrigued as to what you'll be having. What time is it in Iceland, Rachel? That's an interesting.
We're an hour behind you now.
Oh, an hour behind. Oh,
we were the same time, but obviously your clocks have gone forward, so
and they didn't in Iceland.
No, so that's really confused me now, because
yeah. Now you're not sure. Now you're not sure if it's lunchtime or not, are you,
no,
Rachel? So that's
it's nearly lunchtime.
The rest of us know it is. So that's brilliant. So as I say, really lovely. I hope that has been a useful couple of hours for you this morning, and perhaps I get to see some of you in June. So thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Sharon, just a quick question, Sharon. You know, the session on the 21st of June, what's going to be involved in that? Is it going to be anything different to what we had when you came to the college?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, we'll do lots of different bits and pieces on that. Perhaps we'll do a bit more in English and Maths. There'll be some different people, I would think, Rachel. So if you can come, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah. I'll see with what we can do, because I'm guessing it'll be sent out on an email to us all.
Yes, it will. Yeah. We're just waiting to confirm the venues. We've got the dates. We just need to confirm the venues. Yeah.
Okay, so fantastic.
That'll get sent out to you. Yeah, brilliant.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks, lovely to see you all. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.